Get with the program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.
Hello and welcome to Get With The Program Radio Show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. Now, Get With The Program Radio Show is a multicultural, informative, relevant, and entertaining one-hour weekly show offering you a combination of diverse interviews with questions and comments. And as always, we will act as a positive source of information. Now, listen, if you want to be a guest on the show, all you have to do is log into www.getwiththeprogram.biz, shoot me an email, leave me a message. You never know. You may have a conversation that we would love to talk about. Or give me a call at 919-665-1118. 919-665-1118. Now listen, today we're going to be joining a conversation with Jasme Kelly. Jasme Kelly is in the studio with us today, and she is a musician, songwriter, producer, teaching artist, and we're going to have a conversation about freedom seasons. I mean, you know, just trying to make sure I get a good clarification. She's going to share that good information with us, and we're going to have some conversations about Nina Simone. You know, Nina Simone, talented individual, man. Listen, we're not going to waste any time. Welcome to the show, Jasme. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, absolutely. It is a pleasure to have you here today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to have things to talk about. It's great to be in the season of freedom.
Freedom, and we need that right now. A lot of stuff going on.
Freedom from a lot of things.
Yeah. Matter of fact, with that going on, how, before we get started, where you from? Let's talk about where you from. Who are you?
Well, technically, I was born in upstate New York, but I'm 7-8 generations North Carolina. I was raised in all triangle cities, Cary, Durham, and went to college in Chapel Hill. I studied performance. Mm-hmm. Once I graduated, I began doing children's theater, touring, and playing and singing, and really for my own pleasure. Mm-hmm. Ended up going to Brett Chambers' open mic.
Oh, I know Brett pretty good.
You know Brett. Yeah. Back when it was at Talk of the Town.
Right.
I had been out in the world, seen some things.
And that's in Durham, North Carolina.
That was in Durham, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And this gentleman from Fayetteville had come to the club who's originally from New Jersey. And he saw me. He said, "I'm not a manager, but I'm taking you to New Jersey." Anyway, I ended up having a production deal with Wyclef and Jerry Wonder. Out of the Booker basement. I was in the Booker basement. It was definitely literally a basement where they recorded the score. That was really exciting, but that deal kind of wasn't the right fit and everything. But that experience is what taught me about what like being a real roots musician was, or being a real world musician. Now, granted, the Fugees hit it when they did their remake of Killing Me Softly by Roberta Flack, another North Carolina person, mm-hmm. Okay, yep. Mm-hmm. Who's out here making this incredible music that wasn't necessarily in a genre, but they definitely taught me the importance of how music functions in our culture. Wyclef being a guitar player that turned into a hip hop artist, that was one of the first things that had ever happened. You know, like this wasn't Steven Tyler and Run DMC walk this way. This was like a real guitar player, roots, son of a preacher, who became a hip hop artist.
Right.
So that happened, and then I ended up doing my first solo project and released it in 2003 called And So It Goes. And if I hadn't told you it was in 2003 and you listen to any of the tracks on Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon, then you wouldn't know that it was made in 2003. You would just think it's music. So that's something else that I kind of believe in, like music for a time, music for a moment, music for a feeling. So when I think of Freedom Season and Nina Simone, I mean, she said, you know, freedom is having no fear. Mm-hmm. She had a whole song. I wish I knew how it feels to be free.
Wow.
I wish I could break all the chains still binding me. I wish I could say all the things I want to say when I'm relaxed.
Wow.
I'd be starting anew. Yeah.
Okay.
That's folk.
Okay.
That's gospel, that's blues, that's jazz, but that's freedom. That's what black people did.
And speaking of that, we use words in the fields during the times of slavery. We used those words, those songs, and there was messages in our songs. And I find that even today, would you agree with me on that?
Yes. And you know it. You feel it in your heart. The call and response.
Right.
You know, you actually feel it in your genetic bones. Everyone wants to talk about black trauma, but generational trauma, but we also have generational soul.
Now, I find that a lot of musicians are from North Carolina. Do you find that a lot of the musicians are not getting credible messages or getting credits?
Absolutely. I just came back from New York. I work mostly in New York. I actually went on strike in North Carolina. I am going to be a participant in the John Coltrane Festival as well in High Point. And I was speaking with the coordinator, Gerard Morrison, and one of the things he and I discussed was how there's so much talent that came from North Carolina that had to leave North Carolina because they were all from rural towns. There's even a time when I had my conversation with Frances Wayman, Nina Simone's sister, where she talked about how being gifted, and she didn't want to be the first black concert pianist because there were already other black concert pianists. So she couldn't have been the first because they already existed. But how they were never in the same enclave. They were never allowed to gather. You know, the gathering of genius. How they couldn't get together until they got to New York. Thelonious Monk couldn't get with them until they got to New York. John Coltrane couldn't get with them until they couldn't be in Hamlet and in Tryon and in Henderson and all these little places and actually get together and have that synergy and that genius until they got to New York. So that's been the nature of being an artist in North Carolina. Why
do you think that's happening? Would that be some kind of racist move to keep us separated? Why do you think that happened?
I don't feel like that. I don't feel like North Carolina understands the value of its culture. It's not set up to sell culture. It's set up to sell tobacco. It's set up to sell basketball. It's set up to sell education. North Carolina is set up to sell tech. Okay? We're set up to sell soybeans. North Carolina is not set up to sell entertainment that it makes itself. Fantasia had to go on American Idol.
Right. I see.
Vanessa Ferguson had to go on The Voice.
How important from you being a musician? Now, you've been a musician for how many years now?
Over 20 years.
And the instrument your main instrument is the guitar.
Yes.
And that's the folk guitar. Is that the acoustic guitar?
It's the acoustic guitar.
Acoustic guitar, right.
And it's called the folk guitar, but it's also an African instrument.
Do you play any other instruments or just?
I play piano and I play flute.
Wow.
But for example, in that folk, we just heard my rendition of I Wish How I Knew How It Felt to Be Free.
Jasmine, I do want to ask you this question here. How important is black music?
Black music is the music of America. They say that Stephen Foster is the father of American music. He wrote Oh Susanna. Okay? That's not so. Really, the modern American music started with the Fisk Jubilee Singers when they took the field songs, the field hollers, and they actually made it performed in such a way that it was appeasing to white audiences as a commodity and a product. They were like, we are going to see the Fisk Jubilee Singers. They were out on the town getting dressed to go see the Fisk, to see these black people from Fisk dressed in tux singing, I've been buked and I've been scorned. Okay? How is that great in the field? And it's just the same way hip hop is now. Literally, you got hip hop and they're like, ooh, we like that. Now Justin Bieber's got his little trap beats. Country music got a little trap beat. So black music is American music. That's simple.
Wonderful. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take a break here. And we come back, I want to ask you this question. Is it still going on that we are getting ripped off from our music? Do you find that, because throughout the years we didn't get paid for our music like we were supposed to? We didn't copyright our music, and is that because of lack of not having the knowledge or knowing how to manage it and knowing what to do? But we're going to touch that. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to have more conversation with Jasme Kelly. Jasme Kelly is a musician, songwriter, producer, and teaching artist. A wonderful conversation with you. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Now listen, today we're joining the conversation with Jasme Kelly. Jasme Kelly is in the studio with us. She's a musician, talented musician. She plays guitar, and I had a chance to hear some of her music back here. She's been plucking a little bit for me here. And as I mentioned before, she's a musician, songwriter, producer, and a teaching artist. Hello and welcome back to the show.
Hi.
What I wanted to say to you is before we left, I want to ask you, being a musician and you've been around here for a while, you know this game, you know the challenges and the changes that go on, even with collecting money, performing. In the past history, as African Americans, we have been cheated and robbed out of copyright infringements and hadn't gotten paid. What is your take on that?
You have to understand that arts and arts entertainment is what we call a canary in the coal mine, to give you an indicator of other things that black people have been taken advantage of. Just like with redlining, just like with, in housing, just like with jobs, the same thing happens in the arts. They do not want you to know. I mean, Q-Tip told us record people are shady, okay? Little Richard told us. Okay, Ray Charles got his masters, but then here comes Taylor Swift later on in the game, and she done changed up the whole game and took it all. Prince had to change his name so that for business reasons. 50 Cent just filed bankruptcy for business reasons to restructure. So some of it is learning the game and having that access, because no one wants you to promote the artist gets paid last. That's the way the music industry is designed. The artist gets paid last. Traditionally, you would get a record deal, all right? And you would get an advance. And you were supposed to take that advance and make your whole project. You cannot start making money until all of that money is repaid.
Wow.
That's the way the traditional music record business. Now, in the digital world, you have more control. But now that the Wicked Witch of the East and the Wicked Witch of the West, called the internet and the mainstream media, have gotten together, they've sucked it all out. They're sucking all the flavor out. Like if you turn on YouTube, if you're looking for an artist, they're going on algorithms. So there's a lot more opportunity to control your stuff and control because of technology. But it's a much bigger pond than there ever was now. So
what I'm hearing from you is that this game of music is business. It's more business than anything else, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
So the lack of not knowing the business, so that's why a lot of artists, I assume, hire some record company to run their business. So how important do you think it's for more African Americans to own record companies, to own their own businesses? Is that important?
That is absolutely 100% important. This is why we love Jay-Z. This is why we're still wondering who killed Sam Cooke.
Right.
Because he was starting his own record label. This is why, artists, the thing is, everybody has to get a piece because it's business. The radio stations have to get the piece. The streaming platforms have to get a piece. The stylist has to get a piece. The photographer has to get a piece. But the point is that you, as an artist now, because of the platforms, you do have more control. But to be a label, you have to run yourself as your own label. So you have to put all those components together to be successful. The good thing about it is you can control the amount of success you have, because some people would rather be rich and some people would rather be famous.
Now, as a woman, as a female artist, musician, what kind of challenges that you run into when you play with bands? Do you run into any challenges?
I had those challenges before. Those don't happen anymore. I've played with B.B. King. I've played with Stanley Clarke and Marcus Miller and Al Jarreau and Al DiMeola, and Anthony Jackson played on my first album. if they have any problems, they can ask them.
Wow. Those are heavy hitters. You play with some heavy hitters. Wow.
Absolutely.
That's good. So who are some of your best artists? Who are some of the best artists that you would say that had a great influence on you?
Besides Nina Simone, because she's the artist that I identify with the most as far as like my personal life, like, and my connection with the Nina Simone project, my introduction to her family. I'm going to say definitely you can't forget the Lenny Kravitzes of the world. You can't forget the Frankie Beverly and Mazes of the world. And you cannot forget the Luthers and of the world. Layla Hathaway somewhat, because she's just a little bit later on her ability to influence me, because there are things she'd done that were familiar, but she's just incredible. So I don't even try to play in her area. But the contralto voice is something that I had to, get with, because you got to use what you have. And apparently there was a time when it was all about the soprano. Now it's coming back in time to the, they want the sultry voice now again. There are trends.
Wow. Now your style of music, what do you classify your style of music?
We're gonna tag this as roots soul world. Again, the roots part, that field holler, that blues origin, that oral tradition. The thing about blues songs, they are actually covered under the category of roots. You know how in Jamaica they say roots rock reggae? I'm just roots world soul. So roots soul world, because songs that people can easily relate to, songs that you can sing along to, songs that repeat themselves, songs that are the ballad that tell the story. This is how you remember. I don't remember everybody at the Shack. I know there was Pistol Packin' Pete. Who else was at the Shack? Abyssinian Ted, right? Pitching a Wang Dang Doodle, right? That's the story part of it, right? You knew when it was time to get that tag. We gonna pitch a Wang Dang Doodle all night long. You knew it. Even if you didn't know the song, you knew the song. I have a song called Damn Nerves. When you hear it, you're gonna know the song. Cause you're getting on my damn nerves.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you that question. What influences you to write your songs? I mean, people have different methods, different mood swings. When you decide to write a song, what influences that?
I don't really decide. Songs are born. Something just comes out of the air. And I have songs all the time that I forget. So I'm not the best at I get these little phrases, these little flirts of phrases and these fantasies, and then they just happen. And one day I just sit down and it all comes out. Or sometimes I think on it. Like I have this new song called Sunny Day. It was just sun shining and I had this track and I was like, I'm living for this sunny day. I'm living for this sunny day. And that was just the hook. And then so it was easy for me to write everything around it, because I was like, oh, let's describe what a sunny day is like.
Wow.
Sun shining, I'm vibing, looks like we gonna
and you kind of put it together.
Great day.
Wow.
It's been such a long time since I can remember feeling this way. Especially after all the rain we get sometimes, right?
Absolutely. Wow.
Like, what? Sun's out.
Now we're going to touch a little on Nina Simone, and because that's what we really want to have a good conversation about. Because obviously Nina is one of your favorite artists, and you've been following Nina for a while. And but what we're going to do, we're going to take a break here. I'm going to reach out to my good friend Steve Rao. He's my commentary guy, and Kathy Gregg. So listen, we're going to be right back here with Jasme Kelly. Jasme Kelly, of course, is a musician, songwriter, producer, and teaching artist, and she has music out. But listen, don't touch that dial. I'm going to be right back after this. Reach out to Steve Rao and Kathy Gregg. What's going on in your world?
Well, Gary, this summer, Vice President Kamala Harris had her first test as a vice president, as the president, her boss, put her in charge of the border situation in Mexico and the United States. Her message was simple to the Mexican president and the people of Guatemala: please go back home. The vice president, however, emphasized that rather than focus only on the problem at hand, which is many, many migrants coming to the border, increasing every day to the tune of thousands, the question becomes what we can do in the United States to enforce policies that would prevent so many migrants from coming. What is the cause of the the problem, the root cause of the problem? Well, she's given a couple of suggestions. One, she's told President Lopez Obrador of Mexico that she plans to invest $130 million to Mexico for addressing workers' rights and making workers stronger in Mexico. Another $200 million to help increase the economy of Mexico. And in terms of Guatemala, she's intent on fighting human trafficking, drug trafficking, and all kinds of issues. Gary, at the end of the day, we must enforce strong democracies in these Mexican countries, Latin American countries, in the Southern Hemisphere. For only then can we ensure that people there will be living their lives in freedom rather than trying to cross over the border and break the immigration laws of our nation. We wish the Vice President well. She has her hands full right now.
Thank you so much, Steve Rao. Appreciate that commentary. Now I want to reach out to Kathy Graves. Kathy Graves, what's going on in your world?
Gary, let me tell you, we had several states that decided to go ahead and do this lottery bid if you got the vaccine. Now we have North Carolina Governor Cooper putting out, hey, this is the prize. You can get a scholarship, you can get money. And it's like, hey, you want everyone to be vaccinated. So the question is, are we asking the people to risk their lives for a vaccine that has not been approved, or any vaccine that has shown that COVID even exists? But yet alone, we're going to say, hey, we're going to do a lottery bid. So we're going to jeopardize your life and your actual living condition if you get $100 million, or however the other states are doing their scholarships. And we want you to get vaccinated. And we're talking about our kids. We're talking about our kids' age group. We're not talking about adults here. We're talking about a bid for a lottery. So to me, you can't tell me this is not an auction, almost like slaves.
Wow, good information, because I did hear about that too, that they want to offer money for people to get vaccinated. Wow, information. Kathy, once again, thank you for that. Thanks a lot, Kathy Greggs, Fairview Pack. Listen, I'm Gary Jones. Get with the program. Listen, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Now today we join the conversation with Jasme Kelly. Jasme Kelly is a musician, songwriter, producer, and a teaching artist. And it's wonderful to have you here. And you're on the road so much. Jasme, welcome back.
Hi, thank you.
Now, before we get started, I know you mentioned that you do concerts, and by the time, I think the concert has already happened, but recently a concert in Greensboro, right?
Yes, again with the Freedom Season and the legacy of Nina Simone, partially too because there are a lot of, especially since the pandemic, people have taken their arts a lot more seriously locally. Mm-hmm. Not being able to have the bigger venues to go to has actually forced a lot more municipalities to step up their arts game. And Tryon is the home of Nina Simone, the childhood home of Nina Simone, but it's also been registered as a National Historic Monument, and they've built the Nina Simone Plaza. I just recently performed at the groundbreaking on May the 1st of the Nina Simone Archives with Lettucey. So that was a really great way to bring the community and just the focus back to what North Carolina has contributed to the world of arts.
Now, Nina Simone, artist right here from the Carolinas. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about Nina.
Well, she was born as Eunice Wayman, as you know, but she changed her name to really protect her family. I found that so Batman-ish. You know how Batman, when Christian Bale was Batman, he said, "I'll wear the mask to protect the people I love." So when I actually talked to her sister, I asked her about how she felt going in public.
For my list, Nina Simone, actually I'm looking at it, American singer, songwriter, musical arranger, and civil rights activist. That was another thing I heard. Her music spanned a broad range of styles, including classical, jazz, folk, R&B, gospel, and pop. Was referred to her music as Black classical music. Wow, that's broad. That's broad. What did you learn from Nina?
Just play. Mm-hmm. Let people call it whatever they want to call it. You just listed 5 different genres there, right? But she did want to be a classical pianist. Mm-hmm. And she was forced into being a quote unquote what they call jazz pianist. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, her style even came about because when she graduated from Juilliard and wasn't allowed to perform as her white counterparts, she took gigs and was singing, but they made her accompany herself. So that's something else that's very special. To be a singer-songwriter it's one thing to be a musician, but to play and sing at the same time is a whole nother skill. And I'm a teacher, a musical educator, but I do not teach people how to sing and play at the same time. That is just something you have to feel. I will teach them one at a time. You can either learn to sing right now or you can learn to play right now. But you cannot learn to do both at the same time. It's something kinesthetic that has to mesh within you. And I cannot physically put my hands inside your body and make it match up.
Right.
I can't do that.
Wow. Learning from Nina Simone, I'm sure that had to be quite interesting for you. Now, the Freedom event that you recently did, is that something that is going to be going on for a while?
The show developed out of, again, my affiliation with the Nina Simone Project, and it's something that we hope to be able to create a replicable product of. So hopefully in the future we will be able to offer this show as a product at educational institutions, archival institutions, museums, anywhere that appreciates the American culture.
Okay, now, as I read on some of Nina Simone's website, some of the information about, she was a real strong believer and advocate for freedom, and which is good. And I remember she had a quote said, "I tell you what freedom is to me, no fear." Is that important to have no fear, particularly in times of right now?
It's so important to not live your life in fear. I mean, of course there's healthy fear, but you're talking about a person who definitely struggled with self-identity and how much to give her for herself and how much to hold back, how much to protect herself. I mean, there were times when Nina would whip out a gun if you didn't pay her royalties. So I guess maybe she wanted other people to be afraid too. But definitely in this past year, what we've all lived through, if you're not human if you don't know fear, but absence of fear is freedom, because it's blissful.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned just a second ago about Nina when her royalties, she didn't get paid, how aggressive she would be, but she stood up, she had no fear. Throughout your career, when it comes to getting paid, I missed asking this earlier. Have you had an experience when you did a gig and you had to argue or you didn't get paid for it?
Absolutely. Or things weren't the way they were supposed to be. But that, again, is a long time ago, and I dictate how I operate. I operate with contracts, and if I don't have a contract, guess what? I don't have to do it either. There you go.
I was about to ask that question. Based on your experience, what is your format? What would be the format that you recommend for artists to do to make sure that they get paid? Things. How does this work?
Well, number one, I need for every artist to expect to get paid. I need for these people to stop wanting to play and just want to play so bad that they'll play for free because you get what you pay for. And I get it, you need experience. I need for people to stop acting like open mics are American Idol and let open mics be a place where people practice songs and have a chance to, this is not the Apollo, have a chance to actually, I used to go to open mics to meet other musicians. Now it's a whole show for an audience. And you're worried and you think, Simon Cowell's in the audience. That's not so. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. This thing is serious,
So once that happens, I need people to actually, pay their dues. The music community, by the virtue of the way we live, is shrinking because there's not a collective place of gathering to quote unquote shed.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, Lena's legacy goes back to 1933, if I'm not mistaken. 1930. Right. That's a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So she has a overwhelming amount of songs. Have you had a chance to play any of those songs?
Actually, her canon is so embedded. So everybody at some point as a performer, because I also act, do musical theater, at some point you're gonna have to sing, birds in the sky. You know how I feel.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Sun in the sky. You know how I feel. Breeze drifting by. You know how I feel. It's a new dawn. It's a new night. It's a new day. And I'm feeling good. At some point, you're going to have to sing that in your life.
Interesting stuff. And I can hear the messages in the music, you know.
Yeah. She often talked about birds and flying, like, you know, and the sun and the nature and just being connected. And it's a part of the idea of freedom as well. So it's very transcendentalist when you come up with the idea of Henry David Thoreau being influential in American thought, assisting with W.E.B. Du Bois and Black intellectual thought.
Okay. Wow. Good information. We're going to take another break here. And we come back. I do want to ask you, do you think Nina, of course, during that time, I'm sure there was some racism that she experienced, but I want to talk about that and as well as with you as well. Listen, we're going to take another break here and I'm going to reach out now. My pharmacist here, Dr. Canterbury. Listen, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Okay, now I want to reach out to my good friend, Dr. Canterbury. Dr. Canterbury, tell me what's going on in your world.
Man, in my world, you know, I have a little bit of concern about herbal products and herbal medicines. We're often quick to use these, but they're not even FDA regulated. In other words, we don't even know what you're actually getting in some of these products. And so sometimes we think, hey, it's natural, it must be safe. Completely untrue. There are tons of herbal supplement and drug interactions that can occur, even with littlest things like coffee or smoking. And so herbal products sometimes seem like they're safe, but they're not exactly proven to be safe. So be careful before you buy something without spending too much money that may just be snake oil.
Wow. Good information. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Canterbury. Appreciate that. Listen, you listen to Get With The Program Radio Show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Hello, welcome back to Get With The Program Radio Show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Now listen, today we join the conversation with Jasme Kelly. Jasme Kelly is a musician, songwriter, producer, and teaching artist. I'm going to say training artist, but she's training and teaching at both as well. And we're having a wonderful conversation, man. We just flowing with information about Nina Simone. We're talking some good information. Jasme, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
We touched a lot of things, but now I want to ask you, during the time of the Harlem Renaissance, you talked about that. You mentioned there were some great areas in that. Tell me about that.
So the Harlem Renaissance, as I spoke earlier about the wealth of people, talent in North Carolina that had to leave and then couldn't congeal or come to their full expression. I myself was just living in Harlem during the pandemic and felt it still very much alive in the streets of Harlem. The collaborativeness of the arts, the celebration of the arts, especially in the Black, in the human, in the Black American experience. Now, her contemporaries were Lorraine Hansberry, as well as Langston Hughes. So you're talking all the way from the late, mid 30s, all the way up into the 50s until she got basically put out of the country for being difficult and speaking up. But you also got to remember, this is the same time that Jim Crow was thriving in the South. Billie Holiday was being harassed. I mean, anytime a Black voice became too powerful, they had to be discredited. So there was a lot of that going on with Nina. But again, the collaborative effort of her talking with Lorraine Hansberry is what inspired her to write Young, Gifted, and Black. And we celebrate everything now, right? We're just like Black excellence, this, that, and the other. You, young, gifted, and Black. Mm-hmm. That's the gospel part, because her mama was a preacher, but her daddy was that other dude. Okay. So you can hear all those influences: the roots, the activism, the gospel, the blues, the jazz, right? Young, gifted, and Black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream to be young, gifted, and Black.
Mm-hmm. And that was, I remember that was a play too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. So you see how all these things, this one concept got produced in so many various forms of art.
Wow. Do you think that Nina Simone was before her time?
In retrospect, it's easy to say, but my discernment now of what I know about my personal self, feeling like an artist that grew up in somewhat isolation because you need that time for creativity, it makes me think that there may have been more Nina Simones that we just never knew. She may have been before her time, or maybe there were others like her that we just didn't know.
Wow, Nina Simone being before her time. That was a good answer. Now, I do want to ask you: do you think now, with music being taught in the school systems, because we know that even Black history is not being taught like it should be in the school systems, do you think we're missing that element in the school systems?
As a person who's actually been in the school systems teaching music, I don't think it's given its proper importance and credibility. There are students who can only make it through school because of music class. It's just as important. They treat it like it's sports, like it's, but people make a lot of money doing sports. They don't treat it like it's a viable profession. But they're leaning on the social science and studies of left brain and right brain and problem solving. So music is being taught, but it's not being taught for the sake of music. It's being taught for the sake of explaining history. It's much more important now culturally because everybody has their own listening devices. So it takes so much to have one song that everybody in the whole world knows.
Wow.
That everybody can relate to, that you can have a sing-along with. I teach music lessons and I don't even know what to teach some of my children because they do not know songs. The music is not just in the air in their natural life in Raleigh, Durham. But when I go to Memphis, music is playing everywhere. When I go to New York, you're walking down the street, music is playing. You cannot escape it.
Right.
So it's definitely a cultural context of something that people really need to start experiencing more together.
Now, as far as we talked about Nina, as far as her family, you mentioned that you had a conversation with her. I think her sister. You was mentioning something about, what was that? You were telling me something. You had a conversation with her sister.
So my conversation with her sister was so special to me. It was still the weekend of the opening of the archives, and I was staying for the weekend and her at a private location, and then her sister came by to basically, she welcomed me to the family. It says she has 8 children, 8 brothers. There was 8 of them, but there were really 12 of them because there were 4 other children that had died before the first 8. And there was Sam Jr., and there was Lucille, and there was Sister Frances, and then there was Dorothy, who was Alan's mom, and then there was Sam Irvin Jr. So it's like I sat there and got to know the whole family. But one thing that she told me was that out of all the things she's done and been to, that I was one of the only artists that she's met that she said had the most Nina-like spirit. So of course, I'm feeling all anointed and everything.
That's good.
I'm like, I'll be at the family reunion. Cousin Alan hit me on Memorial Day. It was like, Happy Memorial Day. I'm on the text list, everything. So it's really interesting to see how a person grew up in the shadow of a legacy, but yet at the same time that was her sister.
Wow.
It's just like that. And her sister and Frances is 6 years younger than Nina.
Okay.
But she said that everybody in the family, all the older brothers and sisters, would come to her for advice because she was the knee baby, because then they had Sam Irvin Jr. after that. But so she was the knee baby, right? Frances was the knee baby. And I guess when you're the youngest child of so many, you see all the stuff that the oldest children did, and by that time the parents are probably just wore down and just like whatever. So maybe Frances is the one who gained all the wisdom from the experiences of the older children, but she said that they would come to her for advice and for shelter and refuge, and she the baby girl,
Hey, that's something. Wow. Are there any other family members or musicians in Nina's family?
So Frances was a little quiet on this, so I know her mom and everybody sang, but none of them to the point. They knew immediately when Nina was a child that she was something out of this world. They knew immediately.
And do you talk to them regular?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, they are very involved in all things Nina, and they're very pleased to keep the legacy died. I mean, they even tell you. You'll see it on. Nina said she didn't want to live past 70. I think she lived 3 months past her 70th birthday. Not that many days past her 70th birthday. She just knew 70. I'm done.
Wow. Because she came through the era, I think they call it down south the Chitlin Circuit. They had something called the Chitlin Circuit.
Yeah, the Chitlin Circuit is where everybody, I mean, Gladys Knight and the Pips, I mean, even here in North Carolina, you could play at Myrtle Beach, but you couldn't sleep at Myrtle Beach. And then they would come and they would take the black acts and they would go play at Atlantic Beach. So they would they would play at Myrtle Beach and then they would go to Atlantic Beach and play a late night set because they could sleep there.
Wow. Racism. Even existed. The Chitlin Circuit. A lot of listeners, a lot of people always want to know. I've heard different terminology and different words. What the Chitlin Circuit was.
Everybody, I have this saying, there's not a life situation that the black person can't refer back to the color purple. We all been to Harpo's.
Yep, that's right. Exactly.
And honestly, there's some places that are hole in the walls that I love playing. And it's not so much Chitlin Circuit. That's not a terminology anymore because people have definitely refined their programming, even if it's paper plates and something or another. But there are definitely things that appeal to a more small town, rural sensibility. And there's nothing wrong with that because let's not forget, Shakespeare was so popular because he appealed to what they call the peasant population, right?
right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right. So we got maybe another minute or so here. Once again, just for my listeners, we joined the conversation today with Jasme Kelly. Jasme Kelly is a musician, songwriter, producer, teaching artist. And actually, for my listeners, before we got started, when she came in the studio, she was telling me about my software. She was in here. She was ready to start engineering. I was like, okay. So that lets me know that she definitely understands the technology going on here. Now, being a professional musician, because you named some heavy hitters that you've played with, so that's letting me know right there that you've been on some big stages. Yes. You played on some big stages. What would be your message to tell an up-and-coming young artist or musician? Let's say somebody that's 10 years old, going from 10 on. What would be a message you would give them?
I mean, to play, you got to play. Just keep playing. To play, you got to play. It doesn't matter. You sing this, the stage is a stage, the audience is an audience. I sing the same songs at a coffee shop that I do at a festival with 10,000 people.
That's good information. That's going to wrap it up for me, Miss Jasme. I mean, I really appreciate you coming through. I want to bring you back, and have a more in-depth conversation about this music. I want to bring you back to the show because you have such history embedded inside of you. Now, if you don't mind, tell me those musicians that you played with before. You mentioned some heavy hitters.
There was a show that I toured with, Right of Strings, which was basically Return to Forever minus Chick Corea. So it was Jon Luc Ponty, DiMeola, and Stanley Clarke. Also did the Marcus Miller, Victor Woot, and Stanley Clarke tour. I've opened for George Duke with Stanley Clarke. Stanley is a fan of mine. Al Jarreau brought me out on stage.
One of my favorites.
He was just so inspirational. Maceo Parker slammed the door in my face after sound check. And when I said hello, no, before sound check. And then I said, and then he heard my sound check. No, even it was after that. It was after my set. Then he opened his door and said, good job, and then closed it again.
I know him, Maceo. I know Maceo pretty good, too. Wow, ain't that something?
You're not shocked that he slammed the door, and you're not shocked that he opened it and said, good job, and then closed it again.
That's amazing. Wow. Jasme, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for coming by today. I really appreciate that.
All right. Thank you for having me. I hope to see you again.
Absolutely. Once again, you listen to Get With The Program radio show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. And until next time, keep your head up, stay positive, and remember to
Get with the program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.